Welcome to the Sales Whisperer Podcast, session 26. You are pretty enough. Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening to the 26th edition of the Sales Whisperer Podcast. I am Wes Schaefer, the Sales Whisperer. Back from a little hiatus. I was in Scottsdale most of last week for the second annual Infusionsoft Partner Conference. It was a great success. Got to hang out with Pat Flynn and Amy Porterfield. They gave some great talks. We had a meetup. We hung around afterwards and just got to know each other. So that was very nice. But last week I'm slowly getting more organized, getting the team together, figuring out our strengths and weaknesses. And just could not do it all last week. Could not get the podcast and the Weekly Whisper done and finish the book and hit the road. We are getting better at putting our own marketing schedules together. That is the subject of this week's Weekly Whisper. But, you've really got to look over the horizon and plan your schedule out, plan your marketing. But, hey, nobody's perfect, and I am learning as I'm going, as you should be as well. But I was able to finish the book and get the first run from the printer. And it's titled, "It Takes More Than a Big Smile, a Good Idea, and a Twitter Account to Build a Business That Lasts. 72 Stories on How to Succeed in Sales, Marketing, and Entrepreneurship." I basically took my best weekly whispers going back as many as 5 years and boiled them down, updated them for the book, and went to press with this. So I am quite proud of it. We'll do a launch here at the end of the year as we finish it up with a landing page and separate website and whatnot. But if you'd like to get a copy now, you can go to bit.ly, bit.ly/72 stories. Today's guest is rather interesting, Jennifer Tress. She is the author of the newly released memoir, You're Not Pretty Enough. So you heard that right. You're Not Pretty Enough. She's also a speaker and the founder of the project by the same name, which is aimed at building higher self-esteem by providing a forum and discussions around beauty norms and their impact on the individual. We had a great interview. We just wrapped it up on Monday, and I'm launching this on Wednesday, the 13th. So I think you're in for a treat on this session. Here's Jen. Jen Tress, welcome to the show.
Hello. Hi, it's great to be here.
Hey, is this thing on? Is this working? Well, hey, thanks for taking time. Obviously on a podcast, people just have the audio, but I get to see you. That nice little, what is that, burgundy-ish kind of...
Yes. It's like a curtain. I want it to always look like I'm on stage, apparently, nice. Even in my home.
And I have questions about you about being on stage. So get ready. Thanks for taking the time. I found your story. I don't even know how. I think I sent you an email. It was like Huffington Post or somewhere. I read you.
There was a week when it just like everything I was everywhere,
Well, let's talk about that. But for those, in the intro, we kind of mentioned it, but it's, You're Not Pretty Enough. And I'm not saying that to her, everybody. She is quite pretty. She has an ex-husband that's an idiot. But anyway, that's the name of your website, your book, yada, yada. We're going to get into it. But, for those of our listeners that aren't familiar with you, can you give us a, 30-second minute overview?
Yeah. So You're Not Pretty Enough comes from something that my ex-husband used to say to me as the reason why he was having an affair. And so...
Shazam.
Yeah. And so I'm a storyteller based in DC, but I do storytelling in New York and DC. And one of the stories that I told continuously on the scene is the story about the disillusion of my first marriage. And that was just part of the story. The story is actually very crazy and detailed in the book, but the other woman and I wound up meeting up in a bar together and hashing everything out and then confronting him that same night together. So that was never the least interesting.
Two women enter, one woman leaves, right? A little Mad Max?
No, we were like a team. We were like He left. He was like, oh.
So 2 women and a man enter a bar. Okay, go on.
Right. We can get to that. But basically that was the part of the story where he actually said that to me that really seemed to resonate with people. And so when I was putting together my website in 2010, that sort of was catchy because people around town sort of said, hey, you're not pretty enough, girl, right? Like a lot of people started to know that story. And so I thought, well, that's an interesting sort of brand to jump off of, if you will. I sort of recognized it early on as a brand potential and put it on thinking it would be just funny for people who knew that story. But what I found, and I had my writing and performances and stuff on there, but what I found was something completely different altogether. And people were finding me because they were Googling various phrases like, am I pretty enough for anybody to love me? How to be pretty when you're not. I was seeing thousands of searches, every week, and people were finding me, but there obviously wasn't anything on the site at that point to interact with in a meaningful way. And I sort of took that and thought, God, what does the internet tell you when you ask it that question? And it wasn't anything good. So I'm a consultant by day. I just last month started going down to like more part-time hours so I can focus on this thing I've got going on. And but prior to that, I've worked with a lot of executives, a lot of Fortune 500 companies. In DC, I worked with the federal government now. But I'm used to working with clients to help them take a vision to implementation and getting the results that they want. So I simply was able to sort of apply those consulting skills to myself in this project. And I thought, I knew I wanted to speak to those Googlers, those people out there. And I knew I wanted it to be sort of a place where people could explore that feeling in a way that was authentic, productive, and empowering. But I knew my voice alone wouldn't be the one that could answer that question for everybody. I have my own perspective on it based on my own experiences. So I knew I needed a lot of diverse voices. And so I had a lot of friends that were very enthusiastic about sharing videos of themselves talking about it that I sort of edited to, form a narrative. And then I set up on campuses around the DC area, George Mason, George Washington, Loyola, and I collected hundreds of surveys around this and collected more video responses from people asking, when was the last time you felt this way? What was really driving it? And then how do you get out of there? Right. And last year I turned the site over to all that new content, and it started to build a real grassroots following that then the press found out about, and sort of then it exploded in like mid-August. It sort of exploded and was everywhere for a bit. Right.
Very nice. Well, I have multiple vested interests in speaking with you because we just found out we're having daughter number 5.
Oh, wow. You have all girls.
No, I have 2 boys. 2 boys were first, and now 5 girls.
You have 6 girls.
But, the boys, I can just punch them in the arm, tell them to get over it. But girls, are different. And, but, and as a salesman and a marketer, I see this, I study this, and it's like really everything we see, unfortunately, is a lie.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? At least what's coming out of the mass media.
Right.
And so one of the things I try to help people understand with social media and whatnot, technology today, it really is, it's kind of power back to the people.
That's right.
You and I can just let our hair down and lay it out on the line and say, here's how it really is.
That's right.
The good, the bad, the ugly, which people need to hear. Yeah. And so we really are empowered now to turn things around. That's why I liked your story. It's just rude, right? And you overcame it.
Right.
It's like we just had Halloween. For Halloween, I dressed up. I had a big T-shirt that just said "Life," and I just handed out lemons to kids.
No sugar or water.
Go make something out of this.
Yeah. Can I use the S word on here? Am I allowed to say
poo poo?
Can I? There's an opportunity that only I could have done, and I also recognized, of course, that there's a potential story in that. That this could be a really interesting thing for somebody else to see and then go, oh, we want to associate ourselves with her. And that comes from not only the community on social media, so the end users, if you will, the people are benefiting, but I've had multiple now offers for things. So I have a sponsorship potentially coming for the college tour that I'm embarking on. I've had sponsors approach me. So that's a really exciting opportunity and a line of revenue potential. Mm-hmm. And then, the book is a line of revenue potential. The tour itself, speaking fees for the tour itself and conferences and things like that. There's a lot of revenue channels that are really merchandising in the future, things like that, right? So there's a lot of channels I could see this going into.
Right.
And I think the secret to getting it to that next level is making sure that I never sell out the community. Mm-hmm. So that's why I've avoided advertising on the site, quite honestly.
Right. So listen, you can say poo-poo on this. If you ever quote Bill Gates again, we're done, okay? You can mention Steve Jobs, all right? But
Got you.
Don't bring up the devil.
Gotcha.
All right. So this happened to you when? The beginning of the... personally, like a decade ago?
A little longer than that. It happened in the late 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then when did you start this venture then? How long did it take?
So I started storytelling in 2010, so 3 years ago.
Okay.
And then it was I think August of 2010 that I started the website. And so I started seeing these things. And I think it was 2 years after that I was able to turn over that whole site content.
Okay.
So the line from A to B there was really seeing it, having to hook up with universities. And once they endorsed the project, that gave it a lot of credibility, right? But then it was like, okay, you have to take our classes to know how to work with subjects that you're conducting research on campus before we can even allow you. It's like, that like one step forward, three steps back thing, right? It's like, okay, but I think determination like really comes into play there. It's those who are most determined are the ones that really succeed. You don't even have to be the most talented. I think it's just that you have to be the most persistent and provide a quality product and service, Right. And so... taking it, once I got on camp, it was like, okay, I'm going to do this. That was an unforeseen hurdle, but I'm going to do this. And then editing all those videos, I did that myself. That is just, after a while, I was like,
yuck.
No more. So it took 2 years from like sort of concept, seeing the need and then maybe 6 months later, I decided to do something about it. Okay. And that's when I started planning. I think the importance of when you're doing a big overhaul on something and presenting something new to the marketplace, that you have to really do a lot of planning. And so, what did that look like? And I had lots of focus groups with people and, if the site with this. And then after I did the site, before I really did any sort of hardcore launching, I did a series of talks in salons where I showed them to audiences, and then they told me what was missing from the site. They were like, great, what do you want us to do now that we see that this need is here? Now there's a great place for people to connect, but how are we supposed to motivate ourselves to participate in what you're giving? So I was like, wow, you're right. That's missing. And so then that was another phase to kind of develop tips and tools and guides and things that people had suggested based on scenarios they kept saying to me that then emerged as sort of, these are the common sort of things that trigger this feeling. And then these are the things that people are telling me are most useful in eradicating that feeling. So that feedback process, I think that's really, if you could be really open to feedback, that's a really helpful thing too, because your people are telling you, this is what I want from you. And if you can deliver it to them, you're great in their eyes.
Well, that's an important part, the feedback for sure, but something you kind of glossed over in there is like what's the next step is realizing to serve the community, you need to have something to sell.
Right.
Right? I've been in sales and marketing since 97, doing this since 2006, and sales and marketing hands down, entrepreneurs, they don't know anything about it. They don't like it. They approach it, think, I don't want to be that cheesy, pushy used car salesman. Mm-hmm. But if you just going out and making people feel good with a 30-minute or a 1 hour or 8-hour talk,
where does it go?
Okay, great. Yeah, they got to have something they can take with them.
Right.
And, asking for money, right, or providing, like you said, a quality product or service that's worth something and taking their money, letting people invest in themselves through you is a good thing. Mm-hmm. It's not evil.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, well, here's the thing. I think there is a misconstruction of how people are. I don't hold salons and say, come in, give me $50. What people do is conferences pay me. Colleges pay me to come in, at a very, low price. And then for the students and attendees, it's all free. And it's not, here, let me tell you and make you think about how you feel bad about yourself so that then I can manipulate the situation to sell you something. Because I don't sell anything afterwards either.
Well, but you've got a book.
Right, yes. And I do have that. It's promotion for sure.
Yeah, and you're building a community. Even if somebody buys a T-shirt from you as merchandise, whatever comes out, they wear it to the gym or wherever. They throw it on a Saturday morning to go grocery shopping without having the pressure to think, I got to get all dolled up to go get some milk and eggs because I'm not pretty enough, right?
And that's a reminder that you don't have to do that.
Absolutely. That $10 or $20 T-shirt is going to empower people, and it's not – you're helping them by having something they can buy and own and remind themselves, even if it's a $5, bumper sticker or thing they can put on their computer or on their cubicle wall. Right?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, that's further down the line. That's not where I'm at right now, but that's definitely in the plans. And I think you're right. It's a way to remind yourself like, oh yeah, I'm throwing this T-shirt on. That's right. I shouldn't worry about this stuff so much.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You got it.
Yeah.
You got it.
Because the jerks, you want that as a filter anyway, right? So
you do.
Go out with no hair and makeup. I used to always tell people, like, you want to meet women? Go grocery shopping. That was 18 and a half years ago since I had to go do that. But,
right. Right.
Go
Thank
meet
God,
people
right?
when their
Thank
guard
God.
is down, right? And just shooting the breeze. But, oh, well.
Sporting, I think intramural sports is really good for that too, where you can, because, girls play a lot of sports now too, soccer, all that sort of stuff, right?
Right.
So we're not wearing a lot of makeup when we're doing that usually, we got our hairs back and all that. So you're right, our guard is down and you're meeting our most authentic selves. That's a really good point.
Well, I don't sweat. So, I look just as good when I'm playing sports,
Oh, of course,
it's just,
right.
Yeah. Tight. So, all right. So when did this storytelling come out? Because I've seen some of your pictures. You're on stage. Are you singing? Are you telling stories? Are you doing both? What's up with that?
I just tell stories and then do readings from the book.
Okay.
And so the singing thing came up through an organization called Story League that's here in DC, and they produce monthly shows. And this was one where we had a band. It's called the Harry Karaoke Band. So they're a backup band for live karaoke. Do you have that in your area?
I don't think so.
It's really fun. They have it's a live band behind you. And instead of just having like the digital track play, you have a live band backing you up at karaoke. And so you really feel like a rock star. So the producer had put this together and, ironically, this is not ironic. See, I'm going to tell you this in a minute. I just had a Matrix moment, but ironically, the song that was on for the very first time when I was going through this, my ex-husband cheating on me, was Alanis's You Ought to Know. And so I was like, that'll be perfect. It'll be like an homage because that song really helped me. But when I said ironically, I was like, that's not ironic. Neither is the Alanis song. So it's just a little peek in my head. Wow.
Well, the reason I asked, I just got this book, Wake Me Up When the Data is Over. And I'm always encouraging my clients and whatnot. I mean, tell a story, right? Facts tell, stories sell. So, I mean, were you a natural storyteller? Have you worked on this to develop it? Are there tips and tricks you can provide for people to become better storytellers?
Yeah, and you're right. I think that's so true. If you can tell a story to somebody, then they're going to hook on to what you're, be very engaged and more motivated to do whatever it is you want them to do after you tell that story. You're absolutely right. Yes, I think so. I've always been a natural storyteller. My friends, like to say at parties, "Oh, tell that story about," So I've naturally do that. But it's different when you go on stage and you have, sort of, a certain amount of time, usually under 10 minutes to tell a story. And I think in real life, we tend to meander a little bit more. Like, so sidebar. Oh, wait, let me get back to that point. Or, oh, I forgot to tell you. Storytelling, when you only have one opportunity to make an impression, you have to really get that narrative down to where it's tight. And so I always think to tell people there's got to be a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? And the tension sort of has to build in the middle like any story. And so I always sort of think of it as the first act is like a background. Who are the characters involved? What's the issue here? What's the stakes? And then, presenting sort of that conflict. What do we have to overcome here? What's the issue? What's the cause effect, et cetera? And then that third act is really how do we resolve it? Or how did I resolve it? So that the audience is sort of left with a lesson or a call to action.
Right. Have you worked on like improving that skill? Is there any resources you would direct anybody to?
I mean, I don't know if there's, storytelling organizations I think are cropping up all over, but you could probably find a storytelling coach, somebody
right.
to you could probably find it online. Most people tend to write them out.
Yep.
And then sort of memorize them like a script, but you want to talk like you're talking more off the cuff. So,
right.
Reading, engage, you can't look people in the eyes and engage with them and get them really into your story. So I think getting coaching is always a good idea. Who's really good at giving, again, to feedback, who can give feedback and say, I like this part, but I don't really get what the point is,
right.
Of this part of the story, or I want to hear more about this, or
right.
this interests me more. That's always so important to do before you try it the first time out, I think.
Right. Cool. How long has your book been out?
Since August.
Oh, all right.
Pretty recently.
I didn't realize it was that new. Okay. 'Cause
Yeah.
I bring this up a lot. I keep pushing people to write books. Everybody I talk to, get a book, even if you self-publish. I've self-published a couple, and it's like, it's the new business card.
It is.
Right? But what tips and tricks would you advise to folks thinking about writing a book?
Yeah, I think the self-publishing is such a good growing field. I really, really do. More and more I feel like the traditional houses in publishing are, too stuck in a traditional model. And like you said, consumers have a lot more avenues to find what they want.
Right.
And so I think for self-publishing, for me, it was most important to find out who did that best. Mm-hmm. And also for me to replicate the process of a book being published by traditional publishers looked like. So to me, that meant getting a professional editor. Right. I joined a writing group. So I got tons of feedback. I took classes, all that stuff, but then I got a professional publisher. And a lot of them work freelance and in their previous careers had worked at Harper's, at Random House. These are people that know how a real book should be published. And so that was helpful. I got a professional designer. And then the service that I thought could deliver best for me was Amazon's Create Space. I just really dug it. And I thought they were incredible. They gave me a really personalized experience that I was very nicely surprised with, So I had secured 2 pieces of press. I was featured in Marie Claire and then the Washington Post, and I had secured a couple of those pieces of press. And so I was able to talk to Create Space and say, hey, this is coming. Do you think you can sort of raise me up to the top of the queue so that we can capitalize on what's happening? And they were like, absolutely, So
what do you mean? What did they do?
So you're in a queue, when you interface with Amazon, that you have calls with their people. So like before they start a phase, there's like, I hired them to just do final proofreading and things like that. So that goes first.
Okay.
Then there's the design phase once you have the final copy. And then there's the sort of, review and all that sort of stuff. And so you're in a queue just like every single other person is, right? And so depending on when you submit your stuff, you just get added to the queue. And whoever is ahead of you in that is ahead of you. And they go first come, first serve.
Okay.
So, which is fair and how it should be. But in a special case like this where I suddenly knew that these things were happening,
right,
and it made sense to really, can we expedite this? And I was like, I will pay for it,
right,
to get it out. They were like, no, we got this. We'll move you up. And I just thought that was a really special experience, that you don't get that kind of customer service anymore as many places.
Yeah, I've used them twice now, but I find local people that did my graphics and editing and whatnot. I just use them to upload. But their customer service has been great. I just last week actually came out with my second book, and I needed a rush, and I found Snowfall Press.
Oh, great!
So I'm high on them. Their prices were a little bit more than CreateSpace, but I was getting quotes like 6 times more.
Right.
Trying to find local printers, and it's like I wanted to give the business locally. But I can't pay 6x.
Exactly.
Right? I could pay 50%, even 100% more, because books are not that expensive.
Right.
But they delivered for me because I had to pick it up in Phoenix, and CreateSpace actually they delivered on time. But I wanted a backup, and I had Snowfall Press create a small run, so I had both. Because I needed it for this live event, and I was happy to have extras. Rather than have none.
That's right.
So give them a peek, in the future. But I'm happy to sing their praises because
good.
That was the same experience with me. I got to find somebody good, and Amazon definitely does it right. So does Snowfall. So very nice. So then, how did you explode on the scene? How did Marie Claire has not picked up the Sales Whisperer yet. Can you call her? Do you have Marie Claire's number? Can you get her on the phone?
Sure.
She's missing out.
Sure, I will.
So how did you get all this press?
Well, it was in doing the talks. So when I started doing talks at people's, at schools, and then also
how did you get talks? We're gonna boil it right. We're getting.
I love it.
The nitty-gritty.
Those colleges that worked with me then wanted to have me back when the final product was there to.
After that short studio break for solar flares, we are back. Jen had to pay her Skype Wi-Fi bill, but all that's done. I shot over some PayPal, and all right.
All is fine. It was so quick.
So we were talking about how did you get the talks in the first place?
Right. So the schools that I had worked with to conduct the research, did that freeze for you?
Yeah, it did, but audio's still going.
So the schools that I worked with to get the research were the ones that wanted to actually see the results. And so they then had me in as speakers, and, departments actually, sponsored the event and things like that. So they were helpful with marketing it internally. And and I had several students that I had, worked with on campus. And so they all came. And so that became like a thing. And other people too. Women started having sort of like discussions at like women's groups and things like that, and book clubs and stuff like that, and would invite me to come and talk about that, and I would want to show the site. And so one of those, a reporter was there, and she was like, I really like this story, it's very interesting. And so from there, she suggested me to the Washington Post. She was the one who wrote the piece on Marie Claire, but she suggested me to the Washington Post since I was local. They thought, oh, yeah, that'll be great. And then once the Washington Post article hit, it was like all hell broke loose. I got contacted by the Today Show and Good Morning America and, just everybody under the sun internationally, just tons of people. And, some things I said no to. And some things I said yes to.
Right.
So that sort of, it took off from there.
So are you finding, obviously, I would think that women are resonating with this story more. A, because you're a woman, B, because I think there's more pressure on women in general, but are you finding, is this resonating with men?
Yes. You're right that it does resonate primarily with women, but yes, it does resonate with men. I think, the book is very honest, so I would say to your audience, if there was any interest there, it's a little bit, I would say it's the last half of the book's probably, first half is PG-13, the last half is probably, R. So, there's sort of trials and tribulations of growing up woman, right? And so the latter half as an adult, those are obviously more adult experiences. So, but I think men are getting two things out of it. One, they do think about those things, not nearly as much as women, but, even my husband, I'm happily remarried now, he has moments where it's like the old beer belly, right? Bugs him a little more than it did the day before. And,
ain't no six pack. I got a keg right here, baby.
That's right. That's right. That's my kind of guy, though. And, the second is how I want to understand women better. So this gives you insight, I think, into a woman's psyche and how it works. And how guys are
I will be able to understand my wife and my 5 daughters if I read your book?
Yes.
Okay. You should raise the price then, because I'll pay a lot of money. And you should make everybody, they should buy one book per woman in their life, right? So I can read, take notes per child, per wife, per mother, mother-in-law, or sister. So I need 28 copies.
That is funny. The guys that I am friends with, that, my husband and I are friends with, they have bought copies just for that reason. I just, met my friend for lunch, and he's had a copy for his mom. He had a copy for 2 of his sisters. And then another guy friend of ours had 2, one for his sister. And, it's true. I think it's really sparking. People are like, Jen can just talk about that stuff. I'll just use her to raise these things.
Nice. Turn to page 18, Mom. Honey, turn to 22, 16, 41, and 87. My teenage daughters do not read the last 100 pages. I've ripped those out. You should have perforated edges. I can just rip the pages out.
Right. To be given to you at 18.
Put a little time capsule. Right. You can read this at 18.
Right.
All right, so let's go back to your press. Why would you say no to press?
Because I think, in some cases, the press just wanted to talk about my ex-husband. Okay. And I think that, I wanted to preserve his privacy, his right to privacy. Right. And so I felt like the story that I want to tell about that's already out there. Right. It's already out there. And, some are just the same stories over and over again. They just want to sort of ask the same questions. And it's sort of like, well, I've sort of answered that already. I think you want to sort of cast that balance about being out there, but also not being overexposed to where people are just tired of hearing about you and hearing the same thing. And so that was, something that was, I think, important to me too.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
So where can people learn more about you?
You'reNotPrettyEnough.com.
You'reNotPrettyEnough.com. All right. Any final words of wisdom, encouragement for both entrepreneurs and people struggling with their own attractiveness?
Yes. I would say for the latter, I do have a lot of tips and tools on the sites, but, the thing to do, it's hard, but you have to force yourself to assess yourself beyond that surfacey stuff. So you have to really work hard. I think the way I've learned through the work I've been doing is that pretty is often the entree into self-esteem issues. Looks are, because it's the easiest way that we assess ourselves and others. It's the laziest way too, because it's like, I look horrible today. And so, that then affects your mood and you sort of let it, right? You have to sort of retrain your brain to say, okay, well, so what? I'll just put some concealer on and just go about my day because I'm also smart. I'm also really capable. My purpose is greater than what, if I look at than having some bags under my eyes. Mm. It's those sorts of things, right? Being a loving, kind person, so taking the time to really assess yourself for all of the qualities and things that make you is really the trick to it.
Right.
So for entrepreneurs, I would say, again, it's that persistence. I think we all come up with this idea or this ability, we recognize abilities within ourselves, but having the persistence to reach your potential and, just keep at it and keep at it and keep at it is the biggest sort of, I think, thing that can make you a success at the end of the day.
Right. And I think, too, based on what you said, is maybe be open to opportunities earlier. I mean, it took you a decade after you had this basically traumatic experience, right, to see that silver lining. But then it took you even years to really capitalize on it.
Yes.
So maybe take a step back and try to see the silver lining earlier.
Yeah.
In tragedy and issues.
Yes.
And, fail faster, right? Just get going.
Right.
Test it. Doesn't work. Great.
Absolutely. I think that's so important. It was that famous quote, those who never, failed have never tried or something.
Right.
I botched that completely.
Yeah. No, it's fine. No falls, no balls,
Okay, good.
How's that?
I like it.
I'm a man of few words. I say them over and over again.
They're good ones, though.
Well, very nice. So, so again, it's you'renotprettyenough.com. I thank you for taking the time, Miss Jen.
Thank you.
It's my mother-in-law's birthday, so we're going to In-N-Out. Have you ever had an In-N-Out burger?
I have, animal style, delicious.
Oh, all right.
I know.
All right. Gotta love a mother-in-law that loves In-N-Out. So
you betcha. You guys have fun.
She's a keeper.
She definitely is.
Well, thank you for taking the time, and we will have this uploaded shortly, and with the notes and from our conversation and links to your site and Twitter and everything else. And again, I thank you for taking the time.
Thanks so much. It was great talking to you.
All right. See you, Jen. How's that for turning lemon into lemonade? I can't think of anything that would be more devastating than having a spouse cheat on you and then tell you to your face, you're not pretty enough. Jen endured and overcame. And, there's the old adage, turn your misery into your ministry. And that's what she has done. So if you are going through trials and tribulations right now, the old saying, if you're going through hell, don't stop. As she mentioned earlier in the interview, determination is key. You've got to keep going. You've got to stick it out. You have to take a step back, look at that silver lining, find the opportunity, find out what the heck God's trying to tell you, in this situation, so you can adapt and overcome and move on and, take this pain and grow from it, right? Learn from it, grow from it, and then help others shorten their learning curve, reduce their pain if they're going through the same situation. But, you owe it to yourself, you owe it to your community to make that happen. I've always said excuses last forever, but success takes daily effort and focus and determination. That's why I had Jen on the show. I loved her story, her optimism. She really is a happy individual. We communicate offline. And it's been great getting to know her these past couple of weeks, and then especially on the show. And we'll be in touch and probably be friends for a long, long time because I like that type of optimism and determination. But as always, I thank you for listening to this podcast. Please share it with others. Please leave comments on the website, on the blog post. thesaleswhisper.com/session26. Leave comments on iTunes, and it just helps me keep this podcast going so I can help you. So happy Thanksgiving, Happy New Year, Merry Christmas, all that good stuff. Keep selling, and remember that life's too short for follow-up calls. Good selling.